Okay, so we're going to look at the US today because I want to talk about health in relation to politics, and what is going on in the US at the moment is really, really interesting. To better understand what is going on, I want to look back on the past 15 years so that everyone can relate. And to be honest with you, a lot has happened. In the matter of 15 years, we went from this.
This is a nationwide movement. It's a movement to give our kids everything they need. Let's move, let's move!
To this.
You know, it's not the vaccines and it's not the Wi-Fi, and it's what is it then? We lead the world in chronic illness, and that's not something that comes up in any presidential election ever, other than when Bobby Kennedy runs for president.
Make America healthy again. We're going to make America healthy again.
Let's get Donald Trump elected on November 5th. Make America healthy again.
Yeah, the topic of health went from being a Democrat issue to a MAGA issue. So how did we get there? How are Democrats losing ground on a topic that made them popular in the first place? And who is behind RFK Jr.'s MAHA campaign?
It will make the Medicare bill a part of Social Security coverage.
Today, here and now, declares unconditional war on poverty in America.
First of all, the two words sound almost alike.
Hello, everybody. I want to talk with you about a new consumer website, healthcare.gov.
On these inhalers, $7 in France. The same exact inhaler, $500 in the United States. After the FTC sent warning letters to the 4 major inhaler makers, 3 of them dropped the price from hundreds of dollars to just $35.
Okay, so recently Trump said that Robert Francis Kennedy Jr. was gonna be the health secretary. RFK Jr. is a man of many hats, environmental lawyer, author, and activist. He spent decades fighting for clean air, clean water, and the health of our planet. As a key figure in environmental groups like the Waterkeep Alliance, he's taken on big corporations and won. RFK Jr. is also famous for his controversial takes on public health and government policies, which has sparked lively debates. Then in 2024, he entered the political ring as a presidential candidate, blending his Kennedy family charisma with bold and sometimes divisive ideas. He later dropped from the race and endorsed Trump, hoping to shed light on the movement, MAHA, Make America Healthy Again. MAHA is basically the merger of anti-establishment sentiments with what I would call the technologies of self-health. So that means the science of nutrition and fitness, but also supplementation. And on top of that, you also have to sprinkle a little bit of pseudoscience. Now, the birth of MAHA is coherent with a trend that really emerged during the pandemic. As Naomi Klein documented in her book Doppelganger, influential MAGA voices like Steve Bannon pushed an anti-big pharma agenda against liberal elites, accused of lying to the public for private interests, and promoted instead self-health. Again, what I mean by self-health is the power of the individual, all the strategies and habits that you can implement in your life to improve your health and fitness. From green juices to very intense workout regimens, but also sometimes more woo-woo things like exposing your bum to the sun for better vitamin absorption, I guess.
Have you ever tried perineum sunning? You know, where you get the sun where it doesn't usually shine. In only 10 minutes of perineum sun, you get as much vitamin D as you would in an entire day wearing clothes outside. How's that for a vitamin D hack?
So your self-health really boomed during the pandemic, and because it was urgent to encourage people to take the vaccines, to put on the masks, people on the left kind of put on pause their usual criticism of big corporations, including Big Pharma. The skepticism towards those corporations was appropriated by the right. MAGA became the voice of skepticism. MAGA superstars became the main critics of the pharmaceutical industry and associated a bunch of conspiracy theories to it. The Make America Healthy Again movement is a sort of prolongation of that skepticism. RFK Jr.'s records show that he likes to keep corporations accountable, and he's also a believer in a few conspiracy theories. Actually, when I was researching RFK Jr.'s stances, I was reminded of the video that I produced on birth control. That video was meant to shed light on how conservative women appropriate the legitimate skepticism around Big Pharma and the pill. Those conservative women capitalize on anti-pill sentiments to turn women towards methods that aren't very effective, or even encourage them to stop using any form of contraception. Some go as far as to claim that the pill will make you fall in love just with soy boys, that the pill will lead to the end of civilization and whatnot. Obviously, this is not scientifically true. I wanted to make this little tangent or reminder because it's not just about RFK Jr. The right has changed its discourse. to become the voice of skepticism, while the Democrats, on the other hand, stick to the usual script, aka don't challenge the status quo, don't question anything, just stick to us, Republicans are gonna do worse. And I couldn't help but wonder, has the script always been like this? The answer is a clear no. Historically, Democrats have been at the forefront of the biggest, most significant health policies in the US. I'll give you two big examples and some analysis and explanations. First example, and probably the most important, in the mid-1960s, Democrat President Lyndon B. Johnson declared the war on poverty and basically told his administration to come up with bold policies with a look that says, don't worry about the money, I got you covered. Some of those policies were better than others, but one really stood out. Medicare and Medicaid. These programs aimed to provide healthcare for vulnerable populations. Medicare was for Americans aged 65 and older, regardless of their income, and Medicaid was for low-income individuals and families. Actually, I remember when we learned more about those policies at university, our teacher told us to pay. Medicaid was for low-income individuals and families. Actually, I remember when we learned more about those policies at university, our teacher told us to pay attention to the word choice. Medicare and Medicaid. Medicare for the old, Medicaid for the poor. Care has a positive connotation, it's something you're happy to do, whereas aid kind of has a more negative connotation. It's that thing that we kind of have to do. Around the same time, women were campaigning to gain access to the contraceptive pill, and the FDA finally approved it for married couple in 1960. But also at that time, in the west of the country, the Black Panthers were working on developing awareness around a disease called sickle cell anemia, which primarily targets people of African descent. So yeah, it was a time where health was taken quite seriously, and Democrats were committed to put it at the forefront of their agenda. In the context of the Cold War, the US understood that if they wanted to be perceived as a global superpower, they had to have a healthy population. So they put money on the table and improved the lives of millions of people. Then in 2010, Obama tried to launch a new healthcare revolution with the CARE Act, which was meant to achieve universal healthcare. CARE would support low-income people even more and also create state-based health insurance plans for those who can't afford the private plans. Obama's plans was to get closer to the sort of system we have in Europe. In my country, France, health costs are covered by the French NHS. It's called La Sécurité Sociale, and the surplus is mostly covered by a private health insurance plan that your company has selected and that is deduced from your income. Basically, that means that health doesn't have to be a constant worry. Sure, the system isn't perfect. I can already see my little French commenters saying, Alice, how dare you say it's great or whatever. No, it's not great. But anyway, going back to Obamacare. Well, Obamacare was met with a lot of resistance in Congress, especially from Republicans. That means that the initial text and the text that was passed are very different. Despite that, Obamacare remains the most significant health reform the US has seen since Medicaid and Medicare. Okay, before we go back to where we are now, I want to give you one more example that I think is very important. It's another health-related program, and it is titled the National School Lunch Program. It was launched in 1946 by President Harry Truman, another Democrat. The purpose of this program was very simple, providing low-cost and free lunches to eligible students in schools. The SLNP aims to ensure that children get adequate nutrition during school hours so that they can learn better. The reason why the program was created is because there was growing concerns about kids not getting enough food, especially after World War II, when it became clear that many children in the US were undernourished. The program was meant to help fight hunger among kids, while also supporting American farmers by using extra crops to feed students. Over time, the program became a key part of schools, especially for low-income families. US officials wanted to open a new chapter in world history and put the US at the center of it. That meant building a strong nation with stable and diverse infrastructure, a flourishing economy, military power, and a healthy population. And then...
Good evening. I'm speaking to you tonight to give you a report on the state of our nation's economy.
A man's right to work as he will, to spend what he earns, to own property, to have the state as servant and not as master. They are the essence of a free economy.
No more welfarism, time for social disintegration. neoliberals tried to challenge the various healthcare programs and policies put in place and promote instead private solutions. The National School Lunch Program's budget continued to increase because of inflation and also rising demand, but Republicans still try to cut costs here and there in very sneaky ways. Like, have you heard about the ketchup is a vegetable controversy?
Ketchup is a vegetable, ketchup is a vegetable.
Well, under Reagan's administration, the guidelines for school lunches changed a little bit. The definition of what a vegetable is expanded to include things like ketchup and pickle relish. There you go, fries, steak, and ketchup. Carbs, proteins, and vegetable. Make America healthy again. Obviously, this sparked a lot of criticism, and the ketchup is a vegetable remained a symbol of Republicans' disdain for child nutrition, but also income inequality. Now, the thing I see from post-war America until the 1960s is that Democrats used health measures like Medicaid or Medicare, or also the school lunch programs, to set an agenda, a bold vision of what America should be. Under neoliberalism, however, health measures were reduced to a sort of compensation for rapid privatization and rising living costs. In other words, post-war America attached healthcare to the national narrative. But after the 1980s, healthcare only became this thing that you kind of have to do. Think back on Obamacare and the struggle that it was to pass Congress. That was a proof that neoliberalism had won. Democrats then had to work with private health, and private health took over the Democratic Party. Interestingly, while Barack Obama was fighting to pass the CARE Act, Michelle Obama sought to depoliticize the issue by using funding from the National School Lunch Program to start another campaign, the Let's Move campaign. For me, Michelle Obama's Let's Move campaign very much represents that shift from bold health measures to fun, media-friendly campaigns, helping individuals make better lifestyle choices. Michelle Obama appeared on shows to introduce the Give Me 5 challenge, so it's a hashtag where you share like 5 healthy habits. She also got celebrities involved in the campaign, like Beyoncé. It really feels like that's how Democrats do politics these days, with Kamala Harris doing a campaign around being brat, and securing a huge amount of celebrity endorsements. Many commentators argued that that strategy was revealing of a lack of bold measures, bold policies that could galvanize people. Instead, Harris embraced continuity. She wanted to rekindle the hope campaign of Barack Obama, but she did not attach any bold measures like the CARE Act. Harris organized her campaign around the loss of abortion rights. The campaign was a reaction to the agenda set by the right. It wasn't bringing anything new to the table. It didn't say, okay, we're gonna bring back abortion rights, don't worry about this, but we're also gonna do this big, bold thing. This is what we're bringing to the table. And that is precisely when RFK Jr.'s Make America Healthy Again comes in. MAHA, which is attached to MAGA, hopes to reattach healthcare to the national narrative. So it hopes to do what Democrats did in the 1940s and in the 1960s with Medicare and Medicaid. The face of MAHA is obviously RFK Jr. But RFK Jr.'s knowledge of the field is quite limited. The guy was an environmental lawyer who then turned to health through the anti-vaccination movement. Like, sure, we know Trump's picks have been quite surprising to say the least, but the more I dug into it, the more RFK Jr. made sense. Because RFK is only one part of the MAHA network. He's the guy who brought MAHA ideas to Trump, but those ideas are directly inspired by 2 siblings, Callie and Casey Means. Callie and Casey Means started Levels Health, a company that helps people understand and improve their health using various tools. Casey is a doctor who's all about preventing illness by focusing on things like diet and lifestyle, while Callie comes from a background in tech and business. Together, they're working to give people the tools and knowledge they need to live healthier lives. So Callie and Casey wanted to give their ideas a big platform, but they didn't have access to any politicians. So what did they do? Well, they created their own content. Casey started with pastel Instagram content on diet, targeting women before she got onto the self-help podcast arena. That's where she and her brother built a network with other creators, entrepreneurs, and medical experts who share strong anti-big pharma sentiments and sometimes flirt with pseudoscience. Now picture them: Sean Model, Dr. Mark Hyman, Gabrielle Lyon, Alex Clark, and Brian Bowler. All those people are connected, and they share their ideas through a web of podcasts, mainly the Joe Rogan podcast, but also the RFK Jr. podcast. Until then, the group claimed to represent bipartisan citizens, entrepreneurs, and experts wanting to, quote, take a fresh approach of what is going on with chronic disease in America. But things changed in August after RFK Jr. dropped from the race and endorsed Trump. The group's project suddenly got associated to Trump's campaign. Interestingly, a few months later, Casey Means got on the Tucker Carlson podcast. In September, the group was invited to a Senate hearing to share their perspectives and work. On this little video that I found across their social media platforms, we can see Casey, Callie, Alex, RFK Jr., and Brian Bowler, but also Jordan Peterson. They were all present and vocal at the Senate hearing. Finally, a few weeks ago, Trump got elected. So that means that these people who started from scratch, making their own content on social media, reached their goal of being heard by the most powerful person in the world. I mean, regardless of what you might think about them, their method and strategies, the accuracy of their finding, or the questionable practices, or also the fact that they all own their own business, you have to admit that this is quite impressive. Now, it's very unlikely that Make America Healthy Again will come up with a new Medicaid or Medicare. Trump did not announce any key healthcare measures, so MAHA is probably gonna initiate new legislation to keep corporations accountable and get closer to the standards that we have in Europe. But I feel like the outcome of the movement is not the most interesting part of the story. It's probably gonna be very underwhelming, and records show that Republicans cannot really be trusted with healthcare. What I found interesting in that story is the historical and political shift. The fact that Democrats struggle to build a vision around healthcare, and what that says about how the party has changed. What I also found interesting about this story is how the MAHA movement organized itself and how it used social media in the process. Now that's it for this video. I hope you find it interesting.